Welcome to the Flicks, Picks, and the Nitpicks, and I am your humble host, No 718, man, and this is Road to the Snydercut. All right, and this is gonna be officially episode one, the intro. We're gonna do a lot of discussion talks on Snydercut, give you Snydercut information. This will be another source for you guys. My aim is at least once a week to drop a video, but also I've got a larger project at hand that I want to work with on this. So this is going to be also an environment where we can mine as much information, geek up about what can actually come up. This is like a chill spot where we could all chop it up about the film. Any detractors, I welcome you guys all as well, because I know there's a movement out there of you guys that are so anti Snyder Cut that you just don't want to see it come out. And I want to talk politely on that on our first episode. A couple of stuff that I've actually been looking at with a couple of people discussing and talking about the Snyder Cut, and those that are actually against it. And I actually want to do a lot more conversational pieces on it so that we all can at least get as much, not just info, but as much conversation off of it. Hopefully, we can actually make people spark up some more interest off of it. On this side, I want to also explain our position when you come over here, so it's always clear on what are we doing over here on our side, because I'm starting to notice a lot of issues within fandoms and fan communities, and I want to address that in the first episode so that we're all on the same page. So first off, let's just discuss fandoms before we even get into any Snyder Cut information and things of that nature. There's fandoms for everything. All right. So there is no one solid fan. You may be a comic book fan, and the films may not appeal to you, and that can happen because the comics and the films are not exactly the same. They're more adaptations, and especially for some franchises that have had iterations before, you'd have to update it. You don't want to always retell the same exact story, but you do want to pay homage, like most films do, to the other films that came before it. But most importantly, the source, basically. And when you're dealing with comic books, you have information coming from, like, depending on which character, anywhere from 50 to 60 to 70, over 70 years of canon and information that it's it's kind of hard to kind of condense and keep it into one film. So usually people will select certain comic book writers, some of their runs that they were more familiar with, and then they'll go with that. So I mean, just like most directors, they'll gather up all the comic books that they've seen, and then they'll find the ones that are most interesting to them and the most interesting story to them that can make them flesh out the character, while injecting a lot of different information and source points and things that could remind you from the lineage of the carrier of the character, to make sure that you actually hit all the hallmarks of the character. Because at the end of the day, these characters should remain have an iconic aesthetic. And I'm not just dealing with just the physical aesthetic, if you will. You want to get garner the mental aesthetic. You want to gain the 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 personality aesthetic. So the characters will always remain hallmark to who they are, that it will stand the test of time. So you could always point out, no matter what generation, you could always say, hey, I know that Batman, I know that Superman, I know that they far extend past their writers. Even the writers are still working with some tenets that makes the character who they are. And sometimes there's been times where, depending on the timeline, they have to change the whole dynamic of the character because it's been years. They're no longer high school, or you're aging them up, and certain experiences. And after a certain amount of years where the character dwells in a one space, there'll always be a writer that wants to take them out of that environment to kind of mess with their personality, if you will, just so they could tell more interesting stories. And that's going to happen. And you got to remember, these comics actually extend generations of writers as well. So just when there's a comic book writer reader that's been reading this since they're a child and they're in their like 20s or 30s and they're just kind of getting off. And especially back in the day when you had to really adult at an earlier age, there wasn't so many adult readers, at least at the volume that we have today, overtly. You know, it started to be like a very niche thing for adults because a lot of kids went through the comic book phase and left. Of those that were hardcore comic book readers, they stayed. Obviously, they're the people that eventually went on to own comic book shops, obviously. And I've seen people in suit and ties in the comic book shop as well. It's always been, you can kind of tell that's their thing on the inside. I still read comics, but I do other things in my life. So you're going to have readers crossing different generations. So in order to get new readers, you need to update the world that they living in. I mean, Spider-Man can't remain in high school from the 60s. You understand what I'm saying? After a while, it's going to be obvious. And as the people that were reading them in the 60s get older, they need him to get older with them so that the real world applications, at least as real as it can be with respect to the comic book series, of course. You want to make them feel like they're transitioning into different stages of life so they can still have the comic book aesthetic, but also with the mindset of an adult now that the characters are getting older. But then you're trying to bring in new characters as well. So there's always going to be stories telling from different time points just to keep readers going along. And when I came into reading Spider-Man, Spider-Man wasn't a kid anymore. He was an adult. To me, he was in his late 20s, early 30s, probably. When I was real small reading him. It was until they started doing the Ultimates version where they wanted to really start the kid stuff again, or you had to like watch the cartoons. And if there was a cartoon starting from that point when he was in high school, then you would read it. Most of them kind of was around college. I know like the Fox series was, I feel like Fox series, nah, he wasn't in, was he still? No, he was out of college, or he was just getting out of college, if I'm not mistaken. When they did the animated series that was on Fox. So again, I mean, like when you take him out of the schooling backdrop, being a kid, and he's just an adult. When you're a kid, it's good to aspire to be adult, but it's even better when you're watching series where they're actually in high school with you, because then you grow and develop a certain level of attachment with it because you're kind of growing up along with the characters. So a lot of their personal issues will be very simplistic as it pertains to high schools, liking a girl, whatever, certain social things that pertain to growing up. So when you want to cross all these generational time zones, you're going to have to update the story, update the books, and it's no different than the comic book movies. They're trying to do things where they're pulling from different environments so they can make sure they get the comic book people, but most importantly, you want to get the new people. The comic book people are going to show up regardless. At the end of the day, comic book fans, we're going to show up for it because we're just into that type of shit. So you're going to cater towards new goers and new readers, or new visitors, and you want to make it easy for them to walk into the story and get it. So you want to start the origin off and all of that. Now, like with the MCU, they don't really need to. They could kind of go over the origins quick. They kind of at their liberty now to get away with a lot more. It's a lot more malleable because they got a lot more eyes onto it. Now more than ever, people are more abreast about comic book films, and they're knowing a lot more lore that come from the comic books, even though it's not 100% accurate. It's been manipulated to tell the story that they have. In order to get those new viewers now, you have to adapt to the times. And that's the point. And I think what's happening is a lot of people don't realize that in order to do that is you're going to need quite an orchestrator, if you will. You're going to need quite an orchestrator to make that move and make it fluid, because the people that are the vocal majority are the comic book readers, the comic book fans. But again, it goes back to who are the fans. If you're a comic book fan, you might not like the films. If you're a film fan, you might not too care for the comic books. I mean, there are different types of fan communities now. And with so many different fringe fan communities, you can't really say, oh, it's an insult to the fans. Which ones? I read Spider-Man comics since I was a little boy. Favorite superhero. Even though I had times where I relate to other comic book characters more, but Spider-Man has always been my favorite. And the funny thing is, if you ever really listen to me, I'm more into more mature, darker, if you will, but more those type of aesthetics. But I like all comic book movies just off general principle. But if you gave me one to write and whatnot, I would probably do something more grounded. But that's the kind of my nature, depending on now, maybe depending on the character, I might go a different way because I got different ideas that you can go with. But needless to say, my go-to is more, if you ever seen any of the type of stuff that I was into, it would be more grounded and I guess in a way a little bit more dark or more mature. I would rather say filmmaking, even for comic book movies, because I feel like there's so many different ways you could do that and make it a lot more intriguing. But just because that's the route I would go, that doesn't mean that every time I watch a comic book movie, that's what I'm looking for. I'm just looking for you to tell me the film that you got for me within the context in the world that you have for it. And that's the best way to approach watching a film, because now you're not going in it with any intentions. You're going into it with nor expectations. You're going into it with an honest, I don't want to say awe if that's the most accurate way of putting it, but you're going in there with an honest intent, if that's the best way to put it. You're really just looking to see a good film, and however it brings you in, it brings you in. And unfortunately, because we have so many different fringe fan communities now, you got fans arguing amongst themselves who's more of a fan. And if you ask me, I don't think that's the most appropriate way to deal with fan communities and any type of issues, if you will, concerning anything with regards to the Snyder Cut. I really do feel that if you really, when you argue from a standpoint of fans, you have to be very clear on who the fans are. Because if I'm a fan of the films, I'm a fan of the Snyder films. I am. I like Aquaman, but I do not like it for the world that we started with. If that was the world from the very beginning, Aquaman would have been fine to me. I don't like it going that way because I love the way we started it. More grounded, more. Suicide Squad was disappointing. I enjoyed it for what it was, but it was a big letdown for what I thought it was going to be from watching the trailers. And from what I understand, and we can say release the air cut, it was not what David Ayer intended on it becoming. But that's where it is today. But even though I enjoy it, that doesn't make me less of a fan. And that's the point. I'm more of a fan of what Snyder was how he set it up. There's certain things I didn't like that Snyder did. I do not like the fact that Metropolis and Gotham are right neck across the bay. I hate that concept, to be quite honest. It makes the world so much smaller, and then now it's like, well, if Superman is that close, why isn't he helping out in Gotham? It's gonna make it real murky. I know he had a 5-part story plan, so and the way he did the series, it wasn't going to be as long-winded. It was gonna have a beginning, middle, and end. So it would seem. And if that's the case, then I guess it would be fine. Because then Batman, he intended to die at some point. Because this was Batman in his later career. And then you would have had an opportunity to bring in Terry McGinnis. It was a lot of, with an older Batman, people didn't realize it opened up so much opportunity for storytelling and for characters to already exist. But I want to stay focused on this part of the fandom, and so we can wrap it up. There are different types of fans from different type of small French community or underneath the larger comic book film community. There's some that are staunch canonists, if you will, staunch comic bookist, if you will. They really focus on it coming from the source material. There's a lot of different variations of these fringe fan communities. But so to say that just because I'm a fan of, excuse me, all that Snyder did and contributed towards DC, to say that I'm not a real fan would be ridiculous. How am I not a fan? It would make sense. Oh, so you're not a fan of Batman and or Superman? What makes you think I'm not? Now, I kind of read more Batman comics, but I was more Marvel dude. That doesn't make me less a fan of the superheroes, though. But I'll be honest with you, I'm more a fan of the Marvel guy, and this is a guy that's more interested in what Snyder was doing than I am in the Marvel. And it's not, and some of it could be because Marvel been around for a minute, but Marvel is very formulaic. And as much as I love the formula, I'm interested. This what Snyderverse was giving you was stuff with so much more stakes and so new and fresh that it was more interesting to see where they was gonna take their universe. And it was beautiful that they weren't trying to be like each other, and it made it more creative, if you will, in the storytelling, especially for a guy like me. But like I said, that doesn't make me any less of a fan. And I don't think it's fair to berate the fan community just for it, especially Snydercut fans. So that's just my take on the fan community. We're gonna do a lot more discussion pieces on it. I've actually been listening to a lot of fans discussions on it, and it inspired me, at least on this first episode for Road to the Snydercut, that we at least discuss that part. And as we move forward, we're gonna get a lot more discussion points that I want to really keep talking about throughout the week. And I'm gonna drop that episode today. We're recording today, and the first episode I do want it to drop today, but I also wanted to keep on going. If I don't drop it today, I'll definitely drop it tomorrow. But I do want it to be something that we could periodically keep on releasing and keep on dropping during the week. This week we've released the my very first video I ever did, my love of Man of Steel, and we'll talk about that a little bit on the first episode. And most importantly, we're gonna just keep on, like I said again, bringing more and more information about what's going on with the Snyder Cut and just getting into the pocket conversations that's going on. Because, like I said, I've been listening to Snyder people that are against the Snyder Cut and listening to discussion panels on it. One of note, but I don't really want to make my channel about a bit about making it more personal. It's more about the larger conversation at hand. Now, since this is the first episode, I do want to go over and we'll discuss the anti-Snyder Cut fans. And for you new people that are just finding out about it with HBO Max, if you come across the channel, I will hopefully I'll be able to drop some links to other discussion panels without any type of personal commentary towards it, just so you could get a kind of abreast of the conversation about the Snyder Cut, the ideas that people are having. So when you come over here and have the conversation with me, which I hope is a lot more inviting, and I hope it's a lot more conversational and less antagonistic, because you're going to find pocket dimensions of that all throughout the internet and social media, of course, as in with any type of fandom and fan community. But most importantly, what you're going to hear when you come here, I want it to be more discussion based. I prefer it to be less insult based, but I don't really give a shit about that. I think too many people get their panties in a bunch over the insults. But I will say this: if you have more insults than critique, then please don't do it, because then you're just here to be a troll, and that's a little bit that's energy wasted. That's if you ask me, that's a whole lot of energy wasted. I think that we could utilize our energy towards something a lot more productive than hating on a movie. I think that's a little weird. I take it a step further. I think that's a lot weird. But you're gonna get that. But the argument for all those, for the most part, and if you're an anti-Snydercut fan, please let me know if I'm wrong. I'll We could address this on any. I mean, we got a year to go, so at any, give me all your talking points, all source materials, and I have no problem addressing it. If you want me to do it in more debate format and bulletin points, I'd love to do it for any anti-Snydercut fans, because I'm very malleable, very small channel, but it's a channel nonetheless where I love to just discuss what I like. And if you want to pick my brain on what I thought about the film, as we go on, you're going to get it. This is just going to be picking my brain all day long about it. But even more than that, I want you to get a understanding of Snyder Cut fans from its very inception. And it's always been a hard thing for me to address, because my channel, I really have no interest in. Even on the beginning of YouTube videos, I used to love reaction channels, but then YouTubers started to become some of the most sensitive people that weren't as sensitive to begin with. In other words, to do a reaction video, you would have to, like, someone makes a video, I'll respond to it, and I might even cut up parts of your video so I can address it directly, so it's easy. I love those, to be quite honest, better than actual debates, because some people, when you're on the mic in front of a lot of people, you could tell they don't feel comfortable, and then sometimes people will bring them into hostile environments, so it's hard to get your thoughts together, because now you end up putting yourself in a defense mode, and it's more like you're defending yourself personally as opposed to defending your points, and it can go off the rails. I've seen uh 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 I'm actually still in the process of listening to that. It actually made me stop, because I was like, I wanted to start today. I was supposed to start recording for Road to the Snyder Cut, and I was like, I want to get this on now because I got a lot of things to do today. So I stopped. This a long back and forth. Uh, Maybe one of those guys I don't too care for. The other, I mean, in terms of their commentary, I've heard them talk before about stuff. Not exactly a fan of it. That's not an insult to anyone, but unfortunately, not too caring for certain content can be, like I said, it's becoming very sensitive. And the other two guys, and I'm glad someone even in the comments section said, even for one of the guys I don't too care for his content, was like, yo brother, you need to watch that other guy, because I started noticing it. It felt like people were taking their personal arguments with other people, jumping on, latching on to other people that may not like another person, and they're trying to create this, what Cardi B would say, this super op, and it looks corny, and it kind of diluted the actual conversation. I mean, they literally started reading off super chats with that were insults to the guy that they invited to, was supposed to be their platform, which, all intents and purposes, I respect the person willing to come on any platform like I would, but it just seemed unproductive. And even the guy that was there 3-on-1, you could kind of tell, I think he would have did better with getting his point off had it not been three people going back and forth off an issue that was supposed to be mainly involving two. I don't mind moderators and intermediate people. I do want to host it, not even be part of the debate, because I think there are better ways to handle debates. But that's another kind of topic for another day. We'll talk about my position on that. But it just wasn't the most pristine way of doing it, because you could kind of tell that the gentleman that they had, he couldn't really even get his thoughts together, because it barely was an ambush. It was two other people coming at him while he's trying to deal with one person, which that was the main reason why he was there. And then, I got issues with you, I got issues with, then you could have unmiked, took your screen off, let them get theirs out. Or if you wanted to be a moderator, moderate it. But you wasn't supposed to interject, because it's like, if the referee is siding with one side, then it's not much of a referee. So if you're going to be a true ref, then you come in and you clarify on both ends. Like, wait, I see what he said. You have to really have a clear and unbiased mind. And the two guys there clearly weren't there. And I think one of those guys were actually, because he sounds and comes off like one of the guys that was actually one of the YouTubers that was brought over to I think that was him. One of the YouTubers that was brought over, I think they were overseas to be on set for the making of Justice League. Not the whole movie, obviously, but they flew him over to sit down and talk to him. And that was one of my arguments from before. That was the reason. What would make a multi-million-dollar film take YouTubers, fly YouTubers over to the set? Because they knew that the YouTubers were the ground zero of the anti-Snyder cut and Snyderverse fandom. Now here goes my thing for anti-Snydercut fans. Matter of fact, I'll even get to that afterwards. I want to kind of explain where the anti-Snydercut fans come from. For those coming to my channel. And even if you're anti-Snydercut fans, please jump in at any given time and correct me where it is. But they felt, and I'm going from the very beginning, so some people have been moving the goalposts over the years. Excuse me. But the initial reaction was that they did not like with Snyder. One, they didn't like Man of Steel. They felt there was no hope in this universe, and they felt like it was too dark, not enough of the classic Christopher Reeves style and ideals. They felt that the approach that they took with it was completely and utterly wrong and anti to the character. They felt that Superman's father, I mean, Clark's father, or Superman's father still, Clark, the one that raised him, may not be his biological father. They felt that he did him a big disservice, and they leaned heavily on one scene that Kevin Costner had said was when they asked, and even in this video, which was bothering me, was that when he asked, people say that they felt that Jonathan Kent said that he should let people die. If I tell you, me telling you let people die is a very specific statement. The statement that was quoted in the film was that when he said was that should I have let them die, because he was arguing over him exposing himself, but he had to expose himself to save them on the bus. And Man of Steel saved these kids on the bus because the bus had flipped over a bridge and went to the water. And a parent came over, and clearly it wasn't the first time, and it was a flashback. They said something about your son, yada yada yada, and the whole time Jonathan Kent and Martha Kent was talking to that parent. It was like they seen what your son could do, and they was going the way of he's a miracle, and they was about to put this boy on deity pedestal, like they were prepared to worship him. You know what I mean? Jonathan Kent seen his son outside, and he stepped out, and he was like, "Yo," and then they had the conversation about it, about it, and it was all about, "Yo, you exposed yourself. You wasn't supposed to do that." And the son was like, "So I was supposed to let them die?" And the father said, "Maybe. I don't know." In one debate I see them talking about, and everybody talks about it, they keep forgetting the part where he said, "I don't know." He's a father. Your first priority as a father is to protect your child. As a father, he did not know how to. The world couldn't handle him, especially at a young age. Mind you, he's a young kid. He didn't even go through puberty. He didn't grow facial hair yet. He wasn't ready to let the world know who he was. But there was no real answer for it. Because when things happen and I could save people, what do I do? And that was the hard conversation for a father to have with his son. And that's when you know that it's not that simple. Just like the real world. It's not that simple. It's not like Power Rangers where you're chucking people into buildings and several people have to die. But we don't focus on it because of the style, the way the film is, the way the show series is. The way this film was dealing with it was real world stakes. But people felt that Jonathan Kent saying that was him saying, maybe, I don't know, was the same as you should have let them die. Those are two different statements, coming at it from two different perspectives. One is coming at it from a space of uncertainty, starting from, my son, you shouldn't expose yourself. They can't know who you are. But in a situation like that, maybe, I don't know. And he went with maybe first. Why would you go with maybe first? Because that's your son first. Before he's anything to anyone else, he's your son first. That was the point. That was the point. Now, other people don't like Man of Steel because they felt like he should have taken the fight to space. Everybody knows how he should have fought as Superman, keeping in mind this was his first day on the job. They said he saved no one, but he did save people. Maybe he didn't save enough people for your liking, I don't know. But they say he didn't save anyone. Some people even felt that he never smiled. Hey, this is the argument that's coming from that side, not mine. You have other people that felt that BVS was stupid, if you will, because they felt that now the theatrical cut left a lot of plot holes. They felt like the whole bullet situation and what happened on in Africa, the whole setup, they felt like it was kind of unnecessary. I would argue yes and no, because they serve certain functions. That story serves certain functions to keep the narrative going. Otherwise, you might have muddled certain things, because with Superman in a real world setting, it's kind of hard to deal with him because he's the every superhero. He got like damn near all powers. So how do you create a universe, a real world universe where other superheroes are there? Sometimes you're gonna have to remove Superman so these other superheroes could thrive. Otherwise, it'll be like, what's the point in all these other ones when you have the uber superhero? And I always thought that that's where putting Metropolis so close to Gotham kind of hurt you a little bit down the line when it comes to storytelling. But it made sense because, but you could get away with it because remember, Superman didn't have his quote unquote coming out party until, when was it? Till like he was in his like 33. Batman was already into his 40s. So before Superman was even around, he had adventures. Because now in this case scenario, you could argue that the original Robin and Superman are about the same age. Now, Nightwing would make, because what would have been the point for Batman to be running around across the bay with younger proteges if Superman lived right across the bay? Then it would have been like, why is Superman overlooking Gotham? Because Superman wasn't Superman yet. He was still in Kansas walking around being very nomadic. So it would make sense why Batman could have. I mean, like I said, like I said, you gotta really pay attention to the positioning. Batman being older in this incarnation was genius because we already had 3 Batman movies prior, 4 prior to that other franchise, 2 with Joel Schumacher, 2 with Tim Burton that was part of the same universe. But even with that, it had to. We've already had so much Batman, we could tell an older Batman story now. But then that wasn't enough for people because people got mad that he was older. Not the biggest argument people had, but people, there's a little bit with that. I won't say as much, so you know what I mean. Like that's not the biggest thing that anti-Snydercut issues have. I would more argue you would have to have that issue, maybe not directly with it, but that would be part of the issue because they was mad that they even told his origin over again, which it really wasn't his origin per se. It, they went over it in a dreamlike sequence, like he was having nightmares about his parents dying, and that was another big issue that people had. For some reason, that's a montage under 5 minutes that was a dream about what made him Batman annoyed people. Then they didn't like Jesse Eisenberg as Lex Luthor. They didn't like his depiction of it, which I could understand, but I also understood the choice for it. Because guess what Lex Luthor is? He's just like all of these other YouTubers. An adult, but a young adult, if you will, in this generation, like the millennials. He thinks he's smarter than everyone else. He thinks he's better than everyone else, to the point where he'll get. It's like he's treating the world as if it's one big chess match to manipulate his own ego because he feels like he can outwit the world. And that's the kind of arrogance that a lot of us YouTubers have online. Watch any of your favorite YouTubers, they come up with this certain level of arrogance that we know better than anybody else that seems to like the movies or like what we don't like. We're way more educated, we're way more, polished in our positions, if you will. And I think that's a very arrogant way of approaching storytelling. I think there's a big level of arrogance in that is unneeded. But that's just me. That's just me. I'm not saying that's everyone else. But I do see the arrogant level in it. And I thought that was a smart pivot. Because what he meant, Jesse Eisenberg, he was supposed to read for, excuse me, the dude at the paper. I forgot his name because he ended up making him a CIA agent. Oh, man, Jimmy Olsen. He was supposed to read for Jimmy Olsen, and he said he liked the way he did it so much. He said maybe this is the type of Lex Luthor. This is how Lex Luthor would be. And Lex Luthor had orange hair from the beginning, but people felt like we didn't have a bald Lex Luthor from the very beginning. They wanted this less evolved version of him, and he was using BVS to kind of tell the origin of Lex Luthor. Unfortunately, people didn't like that direction. People felt that a big argument was Batman was a murderer, quote unquote, a murderer, quote unquote, not the people that was trying to shoot him. Batman was a murderer. Interesting choice of words, but again, that's what people are saying. This is where the anti-Snydercut people are coming from. They felt like because people died and Batman did kill people that he was a murderer, and I don't agree with that sentiment. But if you've ever seen any of the Tim Burton Batman and never had an issue, I don't see why you'd have an issue with this as adult men. I don't know. These are just choices that was made, and even in the comic book that we were working from. Let me not say we, but they were working from. Batman was at a point where he didn't care if people died in the middle of him fighting crime. If a criminal died in the middle of it, fuck it. That was the story he was trying to tell. But this is where the anti-Snydercut people felt like they hated all of that, and they didn't like Suicide Squad, which is kind of underneath his shepherdship, if you will, which we know today has been cut up, released the air cut. And they didn't like anything from that except for Patty Jenkins, Wonder Woman, which people somehow neglect to realize he had more of a fingerprint in that film than people even know. But like I said, a lot of people, they feel like Patty Jenkins is perfection, and they feel like she should take on the whole universe. And that's okay if that's what you feel. I strongly disagree. I don't think she's only had one movie that any of you guys know of outside of Monster. Monster was like in the 2000s. Well, we're in the 2000s now, so excuse me, but it was well over 10 years ago. And so for me, I don't think that's enough of a sample size to say that she should just run with the whole universe. We shall see in Wonder Woman 84 though, which I look forward to. I have this weird feeling though that it might be a step down from the first movie. I think I'll still like it, but I have a feeling it's gonna be a step down because of this lightheartedness that they're trying to go for. I think it's gonna, especially at this day and age, the longer that they keep on waiting out, now that's the MCU is kind of going through this transition with their phase, and plus we're all under quarantine. I think it's, if Wonder Woman would have came out when it was scheduled to, I think it would have been liked more. I think as you see now, the tides are changing. People want that darker universe, quote unquote. But if you ask me now that Endgame has already arrived and everything, people are looking for more than that now. A different approach to it. And I think DC was just ahead of their time because we're seeing that now. But that being said, that's just how the anti-Snyder Cut fans approach the Snyder Cut universe, and he feel like he failed on all parts from book before, so why give him an opportunity to try to do something else with the franchise when he could only ruin it and take it down an even worse path. That's their position, not mine. But hey, we all shall see. We all shall see. Now let's talk about what actually is the Snyder Cut. And this is for the new people coming to find out what the Snyder Cut originally was based on. The Snyder Cut was originally based on about and started, and I'll probably break that down a little bit more in chapters, but I wanted to give just a brief overview of the channel, what we'll be discussing and breaking down even further in the weeks to come. Well, what the original Snyder Cut was. And the original Snyder Cut, for the most part, was the film that was shot, not his original idea, but the original film that he shot, that unfortunately when he had a family, Zack Snyder the director had a family tragedy, he could no longer continue the film, so he had to leave. And from what was understood at the time, he left notes on where to take the film further in terms of the reshoots and things that he needed so they could fix the film in his absence. And what's understood is there were certain people behind the scenes that took it upon themselves to use this opportunity to basically reshape the DCEU moving forward because they did not like his vision and they felt like they could do better. If you ask me, I think there were people feeling like it was wide open for Kevin Feige, because at the time the big argument was who is the Kevin Feige. That was kind of Zack Snyder, but he was also the director, and a lot of YouTube pundits kept arguing, well, maybe they needed a Feige as opposed to a director to oversee the whole universe. And there was arguments for it and talking points onto it, but unfortunately that wasn't the case, or fortunately, however you might decide to see it. But the fact of the matter is that he shot everything that he really wanted in principal photography. All that they really needed to do was the reshoots, and the visuals weren't 100% done. He, for the most part, edited the whole film together, and he had the film together, so he had the whole film beat by beat by beat. So he knew exactly what the film was going to be, and it was supposed to be 3 hours or 3.5. All that was needed to be done was this most of the visual effects up to that point. We'll get into the new information probably in our next episode, but for right now we're just going to focus on what the Snyder Cut originally was that it was everything that he had shot up to the whole entire film that he had put together, that you would submit to the execs so they could see what film that you work with. They could give their notations, etc., etc. Now, the discrepancies on what people behind the scenes felt about the film. Some people said that they really liked it more, but it was too long. Some people felt like they didn't like it. So it's going to be hard to grasp what position that is, especially if you're a fan or a layman and you don't know enough about it. That's where it'll get muddied in the water. But as a person that was following the Snyder Cut from the very beginning was people just wanted to see that. Whatever was shot, whatever Zack Snyder wanted, if he had the story all together, people just wanted to see what they were going to miss out. Even at that time, people did not even expect to even get a chance to see it or expect it to be 100% done. No one even had an expectation. No one even thought of it. It was widespread understood in the very beginning it wasn't finished. They just wanted the cut that everyone was able to see, that the execs saw, that left it split down the middle. Some people liked it, some people didn't. Some people said it was a monetary reason. And for the laymen's that are here, monetary meaning that if it's more of the same and we didn't make gross the same amount that we wanted to do on BVS, then you'll be disappointed. It don't matter if you personally like the story or not. It's all about what I could get the most out of it. That and monetary reason, most specifically because if you're gonna rent out screens and you have a 3-hour film, we can't play a 3-hour film, and not too many people have that type of attention span. Snyder is a long format guy. You can kind of tell he's a long-winded kind of guy. And for what they wanted him to put in that film, it was gonna take a lot of storytelling. But they didn't want it. 2-hour films, if you have 3-hour plus films in on a screen, that's less showings. If you're trying to maximize your dollars, the closer to 2 hours I get it, the more it could play on screens. And then the turnover, you get more on the flip. So you can get more on the flip on the first weekend. So even if they ain't too care for it, we got it on the first weekend. So now when word of mouth goes, then we already got as much as we could of the first week. And that's where you're going to get most of your money. So they thought that was going to be the best opportunity to increase their money. Plus, there was also some personal stuff going on, which we'll get into later, something about bonuses and things like that. But that's when you want to get into the nitty gritty, and we'll dig into those environments later. But I just want to make sure for the layman's that don't know too much about the film industry, that was one of the main reasons why they also wanted to trim the film down. And then there's other things that went behind it as well, but we'll get into that later. But the Snyder Cut in and of itself, and this is how it always started, and this is why I personally always took a lot of offense for a lot of people that have felt that they needed to take shots at the Snyder Cut, and by creating an argument that never was an argument amongst the Snyder Cut fans to begin with. They didn't care whether if it was finished or not. They just wanted to know if they could see it. And how far along was it, if it's watchable. And is there a way you could just, they didn't care if you had a blue screen in the back and you could see Diana just talking regular. They just wanted to see what they could have gotten. And unfortunately, anti-Snyder Cut fans are like, well, fuck that. And it's like, well, in the beginning, it was we already know that they were gonna change course. Zack Snyder didn't even go to the premiere. He doesn't consider Justice League his film anyway. So a lot of people have moved on. The Snyder Cut fandom now came when people started comparing a lot of the trailers and realizing there's a lot of, and these guys did their due diligence. They were really going through it and peeling out a lot of things that was in trailers that never made the film, and it also sparked more speculation. And over time, as you can see, people from behind the scenes were coming about talking about it. If organically people from behind the scenes started latching onto a movement, then that means there's people behind the scenes that felt like there was something completely wrong with how that was handled. And they were just as impassioned, if for no other reason. Forget the business. Forget the business. Business is always on the table. Forget the business. But on a very artistic level, they thought that that film should have been seen, or even maybe if it was personal, it was they didn't too care for how it was handled, especially all things considering it was circulating around Zack Snyder's very personal tragedy. So the Snyder Cut for a lot of people, in the very beginning, wasn't about a 100% finished movie. That's an argument. Don't buy into that bullshit. That's a fringe argument. That wasn't even the point. You know what I mean? That came after the fact. How finished was it? That wasn't an argument until like maybe a year later. I was following the Zack Snyder cut. I was up in the cut watching this. This is before I had a YouTube channel. I was just a fan, and so before it was even a Snyder cut fan base, I was there from the very beginning when people were just speculating on it and talking about it, and then as it evolved, then it became a hashtag release the Snyder cut. When more information came out about it was way more completed than people realized, then people was like, yo, can we see it? They just wanted to see that. They wasn't even asking for anyone to put money into it. No one asked for that. No one has the power to ask for that. So I didn't understand the personal attitudes towards it. You know, we could get into whether Superman was who he was when I read him in my comic. We can get on all that dumb shit later. Plenty of time. We got a year to do that. But it was never about that. That's what the Snyder Cut never was about. It was about seeing the vision, and if the story was put together and already cut together, everything was done. All it needed was the visuals and shit like that. People were willing to just watch that. That's how dedicated people were to the story. They loved the story that they were getting. Some people were just fans of Snyder, and I'll be honest with you, I think a lot of people started becoming fans of Snyder due to the anti-Snyder fandom. And if you ask me, it was weird how much people was so anti the Snyder Cut. You'd almost thought that Zack Snyder came into their living room and punched them in the nose at one point in their life. I mean, like literally. Like, I'm not even trying to be facetious or funny or corny, all that shit. Like, you could go out there and see people or really have real strong attitudes towards this. And let's be clear, man. We as YouTubers, we're all trying to jump on some sort of bandwagon that could drive views. Everybody wants views. Me, I'd be lying if I said I didn't care about views. But at the same time, I'm not trying to make content for views. I want to make the content I want to make, and hopefully I could do it in a viewable manner that people will like. So even if you don't like my opinions, you'll like how I present it. You'll like, excuse me, the aesthetic of my page. Hopefully you'll like the colors that I choose. Hopefully it sets off a good enough mood that is inviting, that makes people want to come to the channel. At least that's how I look at it. I don't purport myself to create a space to just force people to want to like what I like. What I would prefer you guys to do is say, he is a good communicator, and I'm trying my best to be a better communicator. And he communicates his positions, his discernments, and his arguments in a very entertaining and consumable fashion that even when I don't agree, I at least can clearly cite what I don't agree about his position. but at least I can respect his position because he's clear. And most important for me, I want to be consistent to who I am and how I present my thoughts and my point of views. Because that's all we can do as YouTubers, to be quite honest. We as YouTubers can only just present our arguments in such a manner and hope and pray that people understand our position. And if they have any discrepancies, we've laid it out in such a manner that they will know how to isolate and get what I'm saying in full context so they can at least appropriately address it the way it was presented, as opposed to creating, like I said from earlier, oh, well, Jonathan Kent said to let people die. He didn't say that. Well, he said when his son asked, when Clark asked, well, should I have let them die? And he said, I don't know. I mean, he said, no, not I don't know. People always say, well, he said maybe. But you always conveniently left out the part where he said, I don't know. That changed the dynamic of the conversation. I could say maybe, but if I say maybe, I don't know. Me saying maybe and maybe, I don't know. Two different statements. It may be about the same, but about if I owed you $100 and I gave you about $100, you still gonna say where the fuck is my 100? I could say I gave you about it's nine. I gave you 97. I ain't asked for 97. I want my 100. You short $3. So if you're not addressing it right unless you address the totality of the statement within its proper context. Otherwise, you're just arguing. You're being disingenuous by pulling out what you wanted to and arguing against that so you could always win. And if anyone could do that, I could pull out part of your statement and argue against that all day long. But if you don't pull the whole statement out, you just wasted 30 minutes arguing to yourself. Because the other two sentences might have answered everything else that you might have said in your 20-minute rant. I mean, it's just fair. Excuse me. Excuse me, pardon me. And that's what I want to be. I want to be consistent on how I present my argument, my position on what things is. And to be quite honest, the Snyder Cut was always about just seeing the vision that he shot from the very beginning. This whole argument about how much it costs and all of that, that was an after effect. That wasn't even an issue to people. No one cared. So the people that created the how much it should cost it wasn't finished, they would just move the goalpost over to an argument that they could win. And unfortunately, the Snyder Cut fans fell for that. They should have said, well, it's not done. That was we didn't care. We want to see that. But you know it's not finished, right? Okay, but we want to see that. That's what we were saying. That's what Snyder Cut fans should have said to anti-Snyder Cut fans. They should have never found themselves arguing or how much it was done and how much it was complete because it was all speculation from credible sources. And we'll get into that down the line. But I just wanted this for the layman's that just curious about the Snyder Cut. That's what it is. The Now we'll get into the argument between the two. Snyder Cut fans v anti-Snyder Cut fans. Where did this come from? This is the stage in which where the argument came from. The arguments came from about how completed the film was. Now, it's not a cut fed spaces, and I did a lot of watching of like Ping Pong Chris Wong. But I followed all the other media outlet sources as well. I used to listen to Jay Roar's channel a whole lot back in the day. Emergency Awesome. I watched so many John Campy and Robert Meyer Burnett heroes. I watched so many different sources. And even though Robert Meyer Burnett didn't have a channel around that time, like I said, I've been just watching so many different YouTube outlets, media outlet sources. I was pulling up concept art. It was just so much information that I was following from the very, very, very beginning that it it would be it would behoove people that feel the need to venture into this type of topic and conversation to do the research. And this is where I will say timeline matters. The reason why I say timeline matters is it's about when you decide to inject yourself into the conversation. And unfortunately, a lot of the release of Snydercut fans allowed anti-Snydercut fans to come into the conversation, submit their argument, and instead of arguing their point, they'll tell you, reestablish what you're saying. So what you're really saying is this, it's 100% done, and then they want to argue that. There was always a cut. And if there was always a cut, the argument the anti-Snyder cut people were having was, well, it wasn't finished. Well, if you didn't care about the cut, then why do you care if it was finished or not? One. And two, if it wasn't finished, and that's what the people in the very beginning was looking for, then what was the need for you to say, well, it's not finished though, right? That's what I'm saying. You got to get your timeline accurate and when you inject yourself into a conversation, because information was coming out as it transpired. More and more people behind the scenes was talking about it, and it just seemed like there was way too many people that were YouTubers. Even if you have scoopers and stuff like that, when you have people that worked on the film overtly talking about it and you totally omit what they're saying and focus on only the people that are saying the arguments that you're saying, then you're being disingenuous. Now, because you're not addressing all the other ones, and they were actually credible YouTubers, very credible YouTubers, some of which were my favorites, that were totally sidestepping all the other information that was out there. But I'm a firm believer in, if you weren't interested in the Snyder Cut, then why are you here? You came here because you wanted to argue. You came here because you wanted to argue. You came here because you wanted to be very not just anti-contrarian. You want to say, but this, but that, but this, but that. It doesn't really matter to but. The Snyder Cut movement was about people just wanting to see the vision that they missed out on. They're already course correcting and changing it for you people who like your series very MCU-esque. I'm trying to be nice to you guys. You know what I mean? Like, or fair, I should say, without being comedic. Because if I'm comedically joking, then it's gonna be attack on other people's feelings, and it's just too much people in their personal feelings about something that's not exactly that kind of personal. It could be personal in the sense that you're passionate about the subject matter, and that's cool. But when people start making it more of a personal thing, that's when the shit gets off the rails. This is still at the end of the day about movies, and at this day and age, when I'm recording it, and I'm recording this on June 6, 2020, do the timeline. We got better things out here going on, especially at this moment, than fussing back and forth about a film that's now going to be released. But I will say there are conversations that needed to be addressed for those that are now acting like they were part of this from the very beginning, because it's starting to be a lot of fake stuff going on. But I'll employ anybody that's a Snydercut fan to not push the negative aspect. Yeah, we can have our conversations for it, because at the end of the day, all these channels are trying to get views and clicks as well. Yeah, we're passionate about our subject matter, but let's be for real. You would like, everybody's trying to get more views. Like, my channel is like, I got like 1 or 2 subscribers, if that, right now. And at the end of the day, I don't care. Like, I care, but I say I don't care because the way I come into this is I'm trying not to focus on doing stuff for viewers. I want to do what I do and work on being better at it, communicating it, so that those that come in, at least they, even if you don't like it, you can say, I like that brother, the way the brother communicates. I actually get where he's coming from when he lays down his arguments, when he does his video editorials, when he does this. So I'm at least a credible, I'm not trying to sell myself as a critic, but at least I'll be a critical, a credible with my critiques. And that's really what I want to be about it. And I want you guys to, if I develop a base, I want it be based on who I am as opposed to what I'm trying to sell to you for fan viewerships. Because it's a lot easier to do this because it's a passion than doing this hoping tomorrow I'd have like 20,000 subs. I don't even promote my channel as strong as I should. I mean, it's just me and I do a whole lot. So I don't really even have expectations for me to grow as quick as everyone else. Especially just the way I'm presenting my channel and stuff like that. And I love using a lot of artwork. That's why I use artwork on the channel. I do love visuals as well. You know what I'm saying? So for me, over time, as I develop an audience, then I'll just look to my audience that support what I'm doing and stuff like that, because now they're part of it and they're putting money into it. So I don't have to, but I would like my channel to be more cohesive with whoever is part of it, because evidently I must be, when I'm starting to gather up more people, there's certain things that they may like and that I like to know about. And as long as it's like, if let's say if I get to a point where I do a lot of rants, I don't want my channel to be a rant channel. That's not what I came to do. It's fun to have rants, but I did not come to have a rant channel. You know what I'm saying? That's a difference. And I think that there's a lot of people who have paid channels. That's what they're here to do, crack jokes, bust jokes on people. But then when someone busts a joke on them, where's my fainting couch? And, we're passing out and then we're losing it. You know what I mean? That's why I always say, like, when it comes to the Snyder Cut and stuff like that, I still have to ask people the timeline. Do you know the timeline, how information rolled out? Because you may be coming into it getting information out of sync. And you're thinking the conversation was about this when that's what it wasn't. You're thinking it's about it's being finished when that's not what it was ever about. And then people allowed people, like people in the Snyder Cut, allowed people to change the conversation, the release of Snyder Cut, to being, it's about being 100%. Oh, y'all being vague about it. Why are we being vague? Everybody that's part of the Snyder Cut knows that we weren't really caring whether it was 100% finished or not, and it was kind of obvious it wasn't. It was, he left before the reshoots. Even though they say he shoots everything that he storyboards, when you put the cut together, there may be things you want to fine tune and tween and change, and before you commit to anything, because what you don't want to do is put a lot of money into a film that has to be edited down. You'll save money on your visual effects. You don't want to put too much visual effects in something that's going to evidently be on the chopping block. And then the reason, so people could argue. I hear people say, well, the reason why they didn't like the Snyder Cut initially was because they didn't like what Snyder presented. That's an argument, and there's some people that have said that, but a lot of people said it was also tainted by it being way too long, making certain decisions that they weren't ready to do, and the fact that they were scared because BVS didn't get the type of attention that they wanted it to get. And to be fair, they even cut that one up. So when they added it in, the people that were complaining the most about it were starting to act like it was a 360 of a film, which to me wasn't. But that also shows and implies that a lot of this was bandwagon jumping. That's what I feel. But like I said, you have to follow the timeline. If you follow the timeline, you'll get a lot more information about what was going on during the moments when things was happening, and as information started to unfold. And I think once you start being more focused on how things rolled out by the years and the timelines and how the arguments shifted, then you can start realizing that where the discrepancy actually came from. But that's just what I think. And last but not least, on this first official episode. We did the intro and everything, but this is the first official episode where we actually went over a couple of ideas and concepts about more introduction, but still having some key points to start on before we really start digging into certain specifics of it. I really wanted to address a lot of the opening talking points of the Snyder Cut and the Snyder Cut fandom. And this part is for the fact that it's gonna be released. I want to just touch on this before we leave today. It's an exciting thing to see that fan support can actually drive studio executives to listen and make a decision on this. Look at the situation with Paramount and Sonic. Everybody's excited about Sonic because they listen to the fans. Well, which fans, you know? And guess what? These fans are being listened to. It's going to a smaller platform. Cool. Now I understand it doesn't interfere with what's going on with what you guys are doing, but I can understand the express concerns, because if this is successful now, they may change the whole DCEU film universe moving forward back to what Snyder started. Now, here goes my argument for anti-Snyder Cut people, because that's what you're fans of. But if you're fans of the DC thing as well, let's say Snyder Cut works, everybody else likes it, it makes people love it, and they want to change, course correct the actual film DCEU universe. Which fans are they listening to now? Are you more a fan because you feel you got your finger on the pulse of these characters better than anyone else? Like Superman. To me, the first Man of Steel was the epitome of hope, because the stakes were so high. That the fact that the choices he made shows that there was a lot of hope in him. Jonathan Kent. I don't like Jonathan Kent. Superman let his father die. And I'm gonna get into that deeper, but how fast was he supposed to go to carry a 52-year-old man within the blink of an eye to save him? Moving at that speed. There's a reason why Superman can't move at that speed. He's a fucking alien. He could not have saved his father without people knowing, because there was no way he was supposed to move that fast, grabbing his father. That means that he has to go grab him and move. That means you're gonna, at that speed, you're jerking him. You would have broke your father's neck trying to save him that kind of way. That's bullshit. But the only way that would have worked is if in a cartoon. A cartoon. Snyder said he wasn't playing with this DCE universe. He was gonna give you some real badasses where shit can go down, the stakes are heavy, people can die and will, because that's the world we live in. And he wanted to do basically a character piece on seeing legit gods from the comics living in the world today as we know it. And look at the world that we're living in today. Look out. Look what's going on in the world. Look at how we're responding to a virus. Look at how we're responding to video clips of people, of what's going on, watching people dying on camera. These people were on both sides of that, as weird as that might sound in the video, but I don't want the focus to be on that. There are people having different types of perspectives on stuff. A superhero existing in this world today opens up fundamental issues, because if he's interfering in saving people, would have to be him interfering in foreign relationships, which makes things way more complex. And that was the reason why they introduced a politician into BVS. They were dealing with a lot of very large, complex themes, because the world deals with things on a very complex level. It's just not black and white like that. If you live in Kansas and you stop the US from bombing someplace in the Middle East, now is he pro-life or anti the US where he's from? Because him intervening could look like he's helping against the country that he lives in and he's from. You see how that works? It's not that easy. You wanted a cartoon. That's what it seemed, very simplistic, and I get it. That's not what they were trying to deal with. They wanted to really deal with the dramas of life and the politics of life and the complexities of, if these guys were to actually exist, how would we react to it? And in the real world, you're not going to say, well, you guys should just save us. Who said so? So says the puny human that can't do what they do. And let's say they do what you do, then what you feel like they should do, just save everyone. It could be at the interference of foreign policies of the country that he's actually from. Complexities. And that's what they were trying to deal with. And I thought it was very thought-provoking, very intriguing. And I get it. If it was too much story for you guys, I understand it. Maybe you didn't like the execution. I can understand that. But some people did and got it. And it's coming. You guys are going to watch it. Many of you will hate watch it. I feel like if everyone, the average person likes it and it gets all the views in the world, I feel like all these YouTubers are going to bow down. Not because that they really want to bow down. It's because they're going to do it for clicks and views. And even if it was horrible, but everybody likes it, you guys, I feel, will bow down because everyone likes it, and that's the wave. And there is something to be said about waves. We're doing a lot of group thinking, and especially when it came to Zack Snyder. And that was one of the biggest issues for me because I've seen it part of a larger issue of group think. All you need is a bunch of people to say the same thing and everybody go with it. Jay used to say a long time ago, man, once you tag lane the game is follow the leader. You feel it? And that's what it seems to be. But I'm excited for the Snyder Cut coming, to see an artist's true rendition. We're going to get into why I think that it went from being like about 219 minutes to being a full on, if I'm not mistaken. This is going to be a 4-hour film, yeah. Well, at 219, that is about a little bit under 4 hours. It's supposed to be a 4-hour film, so film event, I should say, that's maybe cut up into segments. I didn't want to do any reading of any of the new information since it's been out for the past, it's about to be 2 weeks, because I wanted to go over extensively with this part of the channel that will be geared towards Snyder Cut enthusiasts, fans, but I want to also present it in such a manner that even anti-Snyder Cut people can enjoy it. And I'm gonna do a lot of devil's advocate stuff here. Hey man, at the end of the day, I'm all for the thought-provoking conversation, and we can have it here, and we can discuss things. You can ask me questions, and I have no problem in answering it in a video format, and just to make this channel a lot more fun. But I definitely want to do a lot more for this. So, with all that being said, let's clap it up for the first actual episode. And again, man, even if you're against the Snyder Cut, if you're about films and good movies, you should be excited that at least we're going to have a different rendition of it. If you don't find it to be the thing canon, like the cat, any of that nonsense, can we at least just appreciate the fact that we got so many good comic book movies coming out? And hey, you guys got your Matt Reeves movie coming out, and they're gonna start they could use that to flip that into a new DCEU. So there's no worries on that. There's no worries on it. So you guys can get it. But if this is successful, I do feel like you're gonna see movements towards a Snyderverse, and it may actually make it live on DC online. I mean, for streaming, and you guys can have him whichever. I don't care. I would like to go see the Snyderverse in the films, and what they were gonna do in the theater. But if I can only get it on HBO Max, this is gonna be the first streaming service I actually pay for, because one, I wanted it, so I'm gonna monetarily support it, and two, I'm just excited about this rendition, and I want to like the only way, if it's actually good, the only way to lend support is by giving it my viewership, because that's gonna be the opportunity to get that Ben Affleck Batman film that I'm looking forward to seeing, and maybe even see the DCEU bend towards what Snyder did, like the air cut, etc., etc. With that being said, now that concludes the first episode. Again, man, this is going to be a segment on my channel that you guys can get a lot of news reports, information, commentary, and things as we keep moving forward. And over time, you'll start to see where I will be going with this. So stay tuned. Be safe out there. March safely. Be careful. And as always, man, leave it in the comments below. Like, share, subscribe. See you next time. And as always, till I have a better outro, chill. You hear that? It's the sound of us finally getting there. Zack Snyder's Justice League just got announced on Vero by Zack Snyder himself. It's coming, and again, man, we are finally here. And for all those that are anti-Zack Snyder fans, or anti Zack Snyder, or anti release of Snyder Cut, that's cool, baby. That's cool. You ain't gotta come to our party, man. You ain't gotta come to our party. But let us party, man. Let us party. Let us have fun, because we're finally gonna get to see a movie. And guess what? You don't have to do. You don't have to go see it if you don't want to. But I'm sure you will. Come on, man. One more movie, and hopefully, and finally, the vision that we wanted to get. Congrats.